I never imagined that my life would become the kind of story people whisper about in hushed tones, or the sort of tale that finds its way into cautionary discussions about love, loyalty, and betrayal. When I stood before my wife on the day of our wedding, when I looked into her eyes and promised to protect her, to cherish her, and to remain faithful until the very end, I believed with all the innocence of a devoted man that she felt the same. I believed that our story would be different, untouched by the darkness that so often poisons marriages. My name is not important here, because in the end, this story could belong to anyone. What matters is what happened. What matters is the lesson written in the ashes of what once was love. From the outside, people envied us. Our marriage appeared strong, radiant even. Friends would say things like, "You two are perfect together. You're the kind of couple that makes us believe in love again." And in those moments, I would smile, not out of arrogance, but out of the sincere belief that I had found the woman destined to share my life. She was beautiful, not just in the way she looked, but in the way she carried herself. Her laughter could brighten the darkest of days, and her quiet strength made me feel safe in a world that often felt uncertain. I loved her with a devotion that left no room for doubt. I worked hard, built a home, planned for our future, all with her at the center of it. In those early years, everything seemed aligned. We had our routines, our inside jokes, our shared dreams. On Sunday mornings, we would sit by the window with coffee, talking about everything and nothing. At night, we would lie in bed and whisper secrets until sleep stole us away. I thought we were building a fortress of love, unshakable and eternal. But the cracks, they always begin quietly, don't they? They don't come with thunder or lightning. They come like whispers in the dark, subtle enough to ignore, soft enough to dismiss. I remember the first time I sensed something had changed. It was nothing dramatic, just a silence where there used to be laughter. A hesitation in her smile. A distracted look in her eyes when I spoke to her. At first, I convinced myself it was nothing. We all have hard days, don't we? Perhaps she was tired. Perhaps work was overwhelming her. Perhaps I was overthinking, creating shadows where there was only light. But then the patterns grew. She began spending more time on her phone, shielding the screen when I walked into the room. She claimed it was work, but her job had never been so demanding before. She started going out with friends more often, always with vague explanations. "Just dinner with the girls," she would say, or, "I need some fresh air." I wanted to trust her. God knows I wanted to trust her. Trust is the lifeline of a marriage, the invisible thread that binds two souls together. And so, I buried my doubts deep within me, telling myself that love means believing even when it hurts. But love, I would later learn, cannot survive on blind faith alone. One night, I sat waiting for her at the dinner table. I had cooked her favorite meal, something I rarely did, given my long work hours. I wanted to surprise her, to remind her of the simple joys we once shared. The clock ticked past 8, then 9, then 10. No messages. No calls. When she finally walked through the door close to midnight, her hair slightly disheveled and her perfume lingering too strongly, she smiled faintly, and said she had lost track of time. Something in me cracked that night. Not completely, but just enough for the seed of suspicion to take root. I wish I could tell you I confronted her right then, that I demanded the truth. But I didn't. I looked at her, my heart heavy with doubt, and I forced a smile. I told myself that questioning her would make me seem insecure, controlling, paranoid. And so, I stayed silent. But silence, I would soon learn, can be as dangerous as lies. Over the following weeks, the distance grew wider. She was present yet absent. Her body was near, but her heart was elsewhere. We made love less frequently, and when we did, it felt mechanical, devoid of the passion that once ignited our souls. Her eyes no longer lingered on mine. Her laughter no longer reached her heart. I began to watch her more closely, though I tried not to let it show. I noticed the way she dressed differently when she said she was going out with friends. A touch more makeup, a different perfume. She guarded her phone like a soldier protecting a secret weapon. At night, When she thought I was asleep, she would turn her body away from mine, her fingers dancing across the glowing screen. I could hear the faint tapping of her messages, the stifled giggles she tried to hide. And that's when the whispers inside me grew louder. Who is she talking to? Where is she going? Why does she look so alive when she leaves, and so drained when she returns? I wanted to dismiss it all. I wanted to cling to the belief that the woman I married could never betray me. But deep inside, a storm was brewing. The day that changed everything came quietly, without warning. She was in the shower, and her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Normally, I never touched her phone. Respect, trust, boundaries, that was what I believed in. But something that day, something pulled me toward it. My hands trembled as I reached for it, torn between the fear of what I might discover and the desperate need to know. And there it was. A message that shattered the fragile illusion I had been living in. It wasn't explicit. It wasn't even romantic on the surface. Just a simple text. Last night was unforgettable. I can't stop thinking about you. My heart stopped. My breath caught in my throat. The room spun around me. I stared at the words over and over again, each repetition driving a dagger deeper into my soul. My wife, the woman I had trusted with my life, the woman I had promised forever to, was living a life I knew nothing about. When she stepped out of the shower, wrapped in a towel, her hair dripping with water, she looked at me with casual ease. She had no idea that her secret world had slipped into mine. I didn't say anything that day. I couldn't. I was paralyzed between rage and heartbreak, between the need for answers and the fear of what those answers would destroy. But from that moment on, everything changed. I began to watch her every move, not with the eyes of a husband, but with the vigilance of a man betrayed. Every word she spoke, every step she took, every glance at her phone, it all became evidence in the silent trial I was conducting in my heart. And slowly, piece by piece, the truth began to unfold. After I read that message, something inside me shifted forever. It felt like I had been living in a house built on sand, and now the ground was crumbling beneath my feet. I wanted to scream, to confront her right there, to demand answers, but fear paralyzed me. Fear of hearing the truth. Fear of destroying what little remained of the life I thought we had. So instead, I carried the burden in silence. I became an actor in my own marriage, pretending everything was fine while a storm raged inside me. I laughed when she laughed, nodded when she spoke, kissed her goodnight with trembling lips, all the while knowing there was another man in her world, another life she was hiding from me. The days that followed were unbearable. Every moment with her felt poisoned. When she smiled at her phone, I wondered whose words had painted that smile across her lips. When she came home late, I wondered whose arms she had been in. When she touched me, I wondered if her mind was elsewhere. I began to lose myself in the search for the truth. Her phone became my obsession. I would wait for the moments when she left it unattended, brief moments, because she guarded it more fiercely than ever. I would scroll through fragments of conversations, only to find that most of them had been deleted. She was careful. Very careful. Too careful. And that, in itself, was evidence enough. Once, I found a receipt tucked into her purse. It was from a restaurant, dated on a night she had told me she was at her friend's house. The receipt listed 2 meals, 2 drinks. Not the sort of thing you buy when you're alone. My heart pounded as I held that small piece of paper, as though it were a smoking gun. I confronted her gently that night, not with the receipt, but with a simple question. How was your evening at your friend's? She didn't flinch. She smiled, her lie smooth and practiced. Oh, it was fine. We just talked and had some snacks. Nothing special. Nothing special. The words echoed in my mind like a cruel joke. How easily she lied. How effortlessly she looked into my eyes and crafted a story that never happened. I didn't challenge her. I couldn't. Because to challenge her was to admit that I no longer trusted her. And I still wanted, desperately, to believe that there was some explanation, some way to make sense of what was happening. But late at night, when the world was asleep and I lay awake staring at the ceiling, I knew the truth. the woman beside me was no longer mine. She belonged to someone else, and I was living in the shadow of her betrayal. There were other signs, too. Subtle, but unmistakable. The way she dressed differently when she went out, clothes she never wore with me, perfume that clung to her skin when she returned. The way she would hum softly to herself, as though carrying a secret melody in her heart. And then there were the absences, moments when she was physically present but emotionally gone. I would speak to her, and she would nod distractedly, her mind far away. I began to feel invisible in my own home, a ghost haunting the edges of her life. It ate at me. Day by day, it consumed me. I stopped sleeping. I stopped eating properly. My work began to suffer because I could not focus on anything other than her betrayal. I became withdrawn, silent, hollow. Friends asked if I was all right, and I told them I was just tired. But inside I was dying. The breaking point came one evening when she told me she was going out again. She dressed quickly, applying makeup with more care than I had seen in months. She slipped on a dress I had never seen before, elegant, alluring, meant to impress. "Where are you going?" I asked, my voice quieter than I intended. She paused, just for a second, then smiled. "Dinner with the girls. You know how it is." I nodded, though every fiber of my being screamed that she was lying. When she left, I sat in silence for a long time, staring at the door she had walked through. And then something inside me snapped. I grabbed my keys and followed her. I felt like a criminal, sneaking through the night, my car trailing hers at a cautious distance. My heart hammered in my chest, my palms slick with sweat. I told myself I was crazy, that I had become paranoid. But I couldn't stop. I needed to know. She drove across town, far from the neighborhood where her supposed friends lived. She parked outside a dimly lit restaurant, one I had never seen her mention before. I watched from my car as she stepped out, her dress shimmering under the streetlights. And then I saw him. A man. Tall, confident, waiting for her with a smile that made my blood boil. She walked straight into his arms, and he kissed her cheek as though it were the most natural thing in the world. They walked inside together, their bodies close, their laughter drifting through the night. I sat there, frozen, my chest tightening until I could hardly breathe. It was real. No more doubts, no more excuses. My wife, the woman I loved more than life itself, was with another man. I wanted to storm into that restaurant, to drag her out by the hand, to confront them both in a fiery rage. But I didn't. I stayed in my car, trembling with fury and heartbreak, watching my world crumble in slow motion. When she finally returned home that night, I pretended to be asleep. She slipped into bed beside me, her body warm from the night's embrace, her perfume carrying the scent of betrayal. I lay there in silence, my eyes burning with unshed tears, my heart screaming inside my chest. From that night on, everything between us became a performance. She continued her charade of innocence, and I continued my role as the unsuspecting husband. But beneath the surface, the tension grew unbearable. Every word, every touch, every smile, it was all poison now. I began to question myself. Was I not enough for her? Did I fail as a husband? Had I missed the signs for too long? These thoughts tormented me endlessly, gnawing at my soul until I could no longer recognize the man staring back at me in the mirror. The love we once shared had become a battlefield of lies and silence. And I knew, deep down, that the final confrontation was inevitable. The weight of silence became unbearable. I could no longer pretend, no longer carry the poison of doubt within me. Every day felt like a slow death, every smile of hers like a blade twisting in my chest. I needed the truth, not fragments, not shadows, not half-seen moments, but the full, undeniable truth. So I began to prepare myself. Not for the possibility that she was innocent, because by then, deep down, I already knew she wasn't, but for the storm that would come when her secret life was dragged into the light. It was a Saturday morning when I found what I had been searching for. She was in the shower, steam filling the bathroom, her voice humming softly as she sang a tune to herself. Her phone lay on the bed, unlocked for once. Perhaps she had grown careless, or perhaps fate had decided that this was the moment I would see what had been hidden from me all along. My hands shook as I picked it up. I scrolled through her messages, my breath catching with each line. Most conversations were harmless: family, friends, work. But then I found a thread hidden under a name I didn't recognize. A man's name. I opened it. And there it was, pages upon pages of words that shattered me. I miss you already. Last night felt like heaven. When can I see you again? You look so beautiful, I can't stop thinking about you. Her replies were just as damning. Sweet, tender, intimate. Words she once reserved for me were now being poured into another man's heart. One message stood out, stabbing deeper than the rest. Sometimes I feel guilty, but then I remind myself how alive you make me feel. Alive. She felt alive with him. What was I then? A shadow? A prison? A burden dragging her down? I couldn't breathe. My vision blurred as tears filled my eyes. I dropped the phone onto the bed, my body trembling with rage, heartbreak, and disbelief. When she stepped out of the shower, wrapped in a towel, her hair clinging to her shoulders, she smiled at me faintly, completely unaware that her world was about to collapse. I couldn't hold it in any longer. Who is he? I asked, my voice low, shaking. Her smile faltered. What? Don't play games with me. My voice grew stronger, angrier. Who is he? The man you've been lying to me about. The man you've been giving yourself to behind my back. She froze. For a moment, she looked like a deer caught in headlights, paralyzed, guilty, caught. Then she tried to recover, her voice trembling. I don't know what you're talking about. I laughed, bitter and broken. Don't insult me with more lies. I've seen the messages. I've read your words. You make me feel alive. I spat the phrase like poison. Do you think I wouldn't find out? Do you think I'm blind? Her face crumbled. The color drained from her cheeks. She sank onto the edge of the bed, her towel clutched tightly around her, her eyes filling with tears. I didn't mean for it to happen, she whispered. The words sliced through me. She wasn't denying it. She wasn't even fighting anymore. She was confessing. Didn't mean for it to happen? My voice cracked, fury and grief spilling out in equal measure. You didn't mean to sneak around? To lie to me, night after night? To let another man touch you, kiss you, claim what was mine? Tears rolled down her face. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? I roared. Tell me. Because from where I stand, it looks exactly like betrayal. It looks exactly like you destroying everything we built together. She sobbed, her hands shaking. I was lonely, you were always so busy. I felt like you weren't there anymore. Her excuses struck me like daggers. Lonely? I repeated, my voice dripping with disbelief. So your answer to loneliness was to crawl into another man's arms? To spit on our vows, on our love, on everything we swore to each other? She buried her face in her hands, her voice muffled. I didn't plan it. It just happened. He listened to me. He made me feel seen. Seen? My chest heaved as I fought to contain the storm inside me. I gave you everything I had. My time, my devotion, my soul. And you're telling me you threw it all away because some stranger made you feel seen? She didn't answer. Her silence was louder than any words she could have spoken. The room fell heavy with the weight of betrayal. The woman I had loved, trusted, built my life around, she was gone. In her place sat a stranger, a liar, a traitor to our marriage. I turned away from her, my fist clenched, my heart shattering into pieces too small to ever repair. You destroyed me, I whispered. You destroyed us. Her sobs filled the room, but they meant nothing to me now. Tears could not wash away the stains of betrayal. Apologies could not rebuild the ashes of trust. For hours we went in circles, her pleading, me raging, her explaining, me refusing to hear. Every word she spoke sounded hollow, every excuse a twisted justification for the unforgivable. At last I fell silent. There was nothing left to say. The truth was out, raw and brutal, and it had torn our world apart. When I looked at her again, I realized something terrifying. I no longer recognized her. She wasn't the woman I had married. She wasn't the woman I had loved. She was someone else entirely, a stranger who had worn the mask of my wife until the mask finally slipped. And in that movement I knew nothing would ever be the same again. The confrontation should have brought clarity. It should have ended the silence, torn away the lies, and given me the solid ground of truth to stand on. But instead, it left me more broken than I had ever imagined possible. The truth was no longer hidden. Her secret life was no longer in the shadows. But instead of healing, instead of closure, it only deepened the wound. Because now I knew, without a doubt, that the woman I loved had chosen someone else. And knowing was far worse than suspecting. That night after the confrontation, she tried to reach for me. She sat beside me, her hands trembling, her voice fragile. "Please," she whispered. "Please let me explain." I turned to her, my eyes burning, my chest aching with the weight of betrayal. "Explain what? That you lied to me? That you gave yourself to another man while I sat here, believing in you, loving you, defending you?" Her tears fell freely. "I never stopped loving you." I laughed bitterly, the sound hollow and cruel. "You never stopped loving me? Do you even hear yourself? Love doesn't betray. Love doesn't sneak around in the dark. Love doesn't send messages about feeling alive with another man." She flinched, her face crumpling under the weight of my words. "I was lost," she said weakly. "I didn't know who I was anymore. With him, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time." Her words cut deeper than any knife. "And what about me? Did you think about what I would feel? Did you think about the man who trusted you with everything? Or was I just the background character in your little fantasy?" She shook her head desperately. "I didn't want to hurt you. I swear I didn't." "Then why did you?" I shouted, my voice breaking. "Why did you choose him over me, over us, over the life we built together?" Her silence was deafening. I stood up, pacing the room like a caged animal. Every memory we had together flashed through my mind, the wedding vows, the laughter, the late-night talks, the quiet mornings with coffee. All of it now felt tainted, poisoned by the knowledge that behind it all, she was capable of betrayal. She spoke again, her voice trembling. "It wasn't about choosing him over you. It was about me. About what I felt inside." I spun toward her, my hands shaking with rage. "Don't you dare make this about some self-discovery. You made a choice. You had a husband who loved you, who gave you everything, and you threw it away because you wanted to feel alive. That's not self-discovery. That's selfishness." She buried her face in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. For a brief moment, I almost pitied her. But then the image of her in another man's arms, another man's bed, another man's life, seared itself into my mind, and my pity turned to fury once more. I couldn't look at her. I couldn't breathe the same air without feeling suffocated. I grabbed my coat and stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind me. The night was cold, the streets empty, but my head was filled with fire. I walked for hours, aimless, broken. My thoughts raced. How long had it been going on? Did everyone else know but me? Was I just a fool playing husband while she lived her secret life? The questions had no answers, and the silence of the night mocked me. When I finally returned home, she was still there, sitting on the couch, her eyes red and swollen. She looked up at me as if searching for mercy, but I had none left to give. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." "Sorry?" I repeated coldly. "Do you think sorry can erase the nights you spent with him? The lies you fed me? The trust you shattered? Sorry doesn't fix this. Sorry doesn't make me whole again." She broke down once more, clutching at her chest as if the weight of her guilt was crushing her. But I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. Not anymore. The following days were a blur of silence, arguments, and tears. She tried to explain herself over and over again, but every word only deepened my pain. She claimed it was a mistake, that she hadn't meant for it to go so far. She claimed she still loved me, that she wanted to fix what we had broken. But how do you fix something when the very foundation has been reduced to ashes? How do you rebuild when trust, the very core of love, has been destroyed? I began to see her differently. Every glance, every word, every movement was suspect. When she looked at her phone, I wondered who she was messaging. When she left the room, I wondered who she was thinking about. When she touched me, I wondered if she was imagining him instead. The poison of betrayal infected everything. I tried to imagine forgiving her. I tried to picture a future where we could move past this, where her infidelity would be just a scar, not an open wound. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw her with him. I heard her laughter, her whispers, her words of love meant for another. Forgiveness seemed impossible. One night, unable to bear the silence any longer, I asked her the question that had been burning inside me. Did you love him? She froze. Her lips parted, but no words came out. And in that silence, I found my answer. Yes, I whispered, my voice breaking. You did. Maybe not the way you loved me once, but you loved him enough to betray me. Enough to destroy us. She wept, shaking her head, insisting that it wasn't love, that it was just a mistake, a weakness. But her hesitation had spoken louder than any denial could. I realized then that I had lost her long before I found out the truth. Her heart had already wandered, her soul already strayed. I had been clinging to a ghost, a memory of the woman I thought she was. And so, in that moment, something inside me died. The man who believed in her. The husband who trusted her. The lover who cherished her. All of it burned away, leaving only ashes and emptiness. She destroyed everything. And I knew, no matter how many apologies she offered, no matter how many tears she shed, nothing would ever bring it back. It had been weeks since I had confronted Emily. Weeks since the fragile web of lies she had spun came crashing down between us. And yet the silence that filled our home was louder than any argument we had ever had. The walls of our house seemed to echo with unanswered questions. Every glance at her was a reminder of betrayal, and every glance at myself in the mirror was a reminder of my own humiliation. I would wake in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, her phone records burned into my memory. The names, the calls, the late-night texts, they haunted me. Sometimes I would lie awake, watching her sleep, wondering if her dreams carried the same lies her heart had whispered during the day. I wanted to believe she felt remorse, but the truth is, I could never read her anymore. One evening, unable to bear the silence any longer, I poured myself a glass of whiskey and sat across from her at the dining table. She was scrolling absent-mindedly on her phone, pretending as though the tension in the air didn't suffocate us both. Emily, I said, my voice sharper than I intended, tell me the truth. Tell me why. Why him? Why throw everything away for a secret life that you knew would destroy us both? She put the phone down slowly, her fingers trembling. For the first time in weeks, she actually looked me in the eye. Her lips parted as if she were about to answer, but nothing came. Instead, she let out a sigh, heavy with the weight of unspoken confessions. Because, she whispered finally, I felt invisible. I felt like the life we had built together wasn't enough anymore. You were there, but you weren't really there. I needed to feel alive again. Alive again. The words cut through me like a blade. Was I so inadequate that she needed to find life in the arms of another man? Was the laughter we shared, the dreams we built, the nights we spent planning our future together, were they not enough to make her feel alive? I wanted to scream at her, to tell her that she had killed something inside me, but instead I just nodded silently. Because in that moment, I realized something. Her betrayal wasn't just about physical intimacy. It was about the choice she made every single day to live a double life instead of facing me, her husband, her partner. The following days blurred into a haze of suspicion and grief. Every time her phone buzzed, I felt my chest tighten. I started following her again, desperate to know if she had truly stopped. I shadowed her car after she left for errands, parked across the street when she claimed to visit her sister. And every time, I prayed that I would not see him again. But prayers often go unanswered. One rainy Thursday evening, I trailed her car into the dimly lit parking lot of a hotel on the edge of town. My hands trembled on the steering wheel as I watched her step out, clutching her umbrella, her coat wrapped tightly around her. She glanced around nervously before hurrying toward the entrance. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't happening again. Not after all the promises, not after all the tears. I sat there, drenched in disbelief, until the man appeared. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a confidence that made me sick to my stomach. He walked straight to her, pulled her close under his umbrella, and kissed her like she belonged to him. I slammed my fists against the dashboard, the sound muffled by the rain but loud enough to make me shake. In that moment, something inside me snapped. The fragile thread of hope I had been holding on to broke beyond repair. I followed them inside. I didn't care any more about caution or consequences. My heart pounded as I pushed through the revolving doors and into the dimly lit lobby. The receptionist glanced at me but quickly looked away, perhaps sensing the storm in my eyes. There they were, waiting for the elevator. Laughing. Laughing like two carefree souls untouched by the wreckage they had left behind. My vision blurred with rage. I wanted to march up to them, to tear apart their illusion of secrecy in front of everyone. But something inside me froze. I couldn't breathe. My body felt paralyzed as the elevator doors closed between us, sealing them in their own world of lies. I stumbled back outside into the rain, gasping for air. I leaned against my car, my chest heaving as tears mingled with the downpour. I had seen enough. More than enough. That night I didn't go home. I drove aimlessly through the city, the windshield wipers struggling against the storm. At one point, I pulled over by the river and stared into the black water, wondering if my pain would ever end, wondering if I even wanted it to. The days that followed were darker than anything I had ever known. I stopped going to work, stopped answering calls from friends. The world shrank to the four walls of my room and the endless replay of her betrayal in my mind. Emily tried to talk to me, tried to explain, but her words were just noise now. I didn't want explanations. I wanted to erase the images burned into my soul. I wanted to forget the man who had stolen her from me. I wanted to forget the laughter, the lies, the way she once looked at me as if I were her entire world. But forgetting was impossible. And so, I made a decision. A decision that would change everything, not just for me, but for her too. I began documenting everything. The phone records, the hotel visits, the photographs I had taken in secret. I gathered it all into a folder, every piece of evidence a dagger carved from truth. If she thought she could live two lives, I would make sure both of them collided with devastating force. Because I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a man with nothing left to lose. I never thought my life would come to this. Sitting here, in an empty house that once echoed with laughter, love, and promises of forever. Now, the silence feels heavier than any noise could ever be. The story I've been telling you, it ends here. After the confrontation, after all the tears, the shouting, the denial, and finally, the truth, my wife and I reached the point of no return. She admitted it. She admitted that for months, she had been living a double life. A secret life I never knew about. One where I wasn't her priority. One where I wasn't even in her heart. I remember asking her, why? Why betray me? Why destroy what we built? And her answer, it shattered me more than the affair itself. She said she felt alive with him. That with me, she felt safe, stable, respected, but not alive. Do you know how much it hurts to be told that? That the love, the sacrifices, the years together, weren't enough? I had given her everything. My loyalty. My devotion. My trust. And in return, she gave me betrayal. The days after the truth came out were the hardest of my life. Nights without sleep. Days without purpose. I couldn't eat, couldn't think. I just kept replaying every moment in my head, every smile she gave me, every hug, every kiss, and wondered, was it all fake? Or worse, was she thinking about him, even when she was with me? Eventually, I realized something. Staying with her, forgiving her, pretending as if nothing happened, would only destroy me further. Because forgiveness can heal a wound, yes, but betrayal like this, it leaves a scar too deep. A scar that burns every time you look at the person who caused it. So I left. I walked away from the home we built. From the woman I once called my soulmate. I packed my bags, closed the door behind me, and with every step I took, I felt both the weight of loss and the strange lightness of freedom. She cried. She begged. She said she made a mistake. But no, what she did wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. A mistake is tripping over a stone. Betrayal is digging a hole and pushing someone you love into it. And I finally chose myself. Now, as I speak these words, the pain is still here. The memories are still here. But so is the truth. And the truth is, sometimes the person you trust most is the one who can break you the worst. But listen carefully, this is not the end of me. Yes, she destroyed everything we had, but she will not destroy who I am. I will rebuild. I will heal. And one day, I will look back at this chapter, not with bitterness, but with strength. Because betrayal may break your heart, but it also teaches you the most important lesson of all. That you are stronger than the people who tried to destroy you. And so, this is where my story ends. Not with revenge. Not with hatred. But with a man broken, yes, but not defeated. My wife's secret life destroyed our marriage, but it did not destroy me.